number one story of the week has to be the Dallas Cowboys. Another disaster for Dallas. This time they go to Atlanta. We're never really in the game. They've now lost 3 straight. They're 3-5 on the season. And after the game, Dak Prescott, who left with what looked like, a normal hamstring injury, looks like a severe one. He goes on IR, does Dak Prescott with this hamstring issue. CeeDee Lamb also banged up his shoulder. He has an AC sprain. He's considered day-to-day. It feels really, really bad right now for the Cowboys, Evan. But wait. They saved their season. They traded today a 4th-round pick for Jonathan Mingo. So I guess let's start with the Dak stuff. Evan, what do you think about them going down? It will be Cooper Rush going forward at quarterback for the Cowboys.
Cooper Rush is a very capable backup. Okay, he is 5-1 career in 6 starts. He is a quarterback that I think that we can rely on to get the ball to CeeDee Lamb on a fairly regular basis. The problem is the supporting cast for Dallas this year is not strong. You saw Dak struggle amid the up and down offensive line and the lack of weapons aside from CD. So what should we expect for Cooper Rush in this situation? When Cooper Rush has played for the Cowboys in the past, they were kind of loaded offensively, and I don't think that that's the case anymore. My take is that I think that this season they're going to soon admit that it's over and that we're going to see Trey Lance down the stretch. If I was in a deeper 2-quarterback league, maybe any kind of 2-quarterback league, I would strongly consider picking up Trey Lance. I don't think that Trey Lance is good, okay? But he can run and maybe of some value down the stretch. I think that we're going to see him play at some point.
That's a super interesting call. Trey Lance can run in a big way, like not like, Trey Lance can really, really run. Yeah, I'm okay with CD when Cooper Rush is in there. I think this, similar to what Jordan Mason had with his AC sprain in his shoulder, it's like day to day, but it can flare up. It can aggravate at any time. It's certainly not great. And the more they lose, the less motivated CD is going to be willing to play through this. The trade they made today, Evan, everybody's making fun of them. I don't want to pile on, but it just does seem crazy to give up a 4th-round pick for Jonathan Mingo when guys like DeAndre Hopkins, when guys like Deontay Johnson are going for less picks. Jonathan Mingo, by almost any data, like tape bros, analytics bros, everyone thinks Jonathan Mingo has been one of the worst wide receivers in the NFL. Seemed crazy to me to give up a 4th-round pick, Evan, but what do you think of the Mingo deal from Dallas's perspective?
They must have had a really high grade on him coming out of college because that's how teams typically justify making moves like this. Yeah, if you were to stick Jonathan Mingo's profile in any kind of analytical model, like, all right, 2nd-round pick, guy who has this amount of production, 18 games into his career, his athletic measurables, like that guy is spitting out a bust. Like I absolutely guarantee it. And also, like, it was funny. I was just watching Schefter and Orlovsky argue about this on the trade deadline countdown show on ESPN. And Schefter was like, well, they get a guy on a rookie contract for the next 2 years. And then Orlovsky was like, yeah, but that draft pick is going to be on a rookie contract for the next 4 years.
Right.
And Schefter's the man. We love Schefter, but Orlovsky kind of owned him.
Sure.
In that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, if you compare it to Deontay Johnson or you compare it to DeAndre Hopkins and those guys, yeah, they're making money, they're veteran, whatever. Deontay Johnson's going to be gone, et cetera. So I get the comparison there, but yeah, it does seem weird. The 4th-round pick thing, like they gave him a 4th-round pick to get Trey Lance. They really could have used.
And also the way that this organization is headed, that could be like one of the highest 4th-round picks. I mean, they're about to hit rock. They're about to bottom out, I think.
And they're so desperate at running back. They could have had Braylon Allen or Ray Davis or whatever. Instead, they got Trey Lance. And then this year, I'm sure there'll be another crop of good running backs that are available in the 4th round. They're not going to have a 4th rounder because of this trade. It's just crazy. By the way, the Zeke situation, so weird. We don't have to talk about it, but healthy scratch due to disciplinary reasons in week 9. The report from Jane Slater was he's been distracted, hasn't shown up to meetings. I mean, you can't do that when you stink. You can do that if you're one of the best running backs in the league, like Zeke used to be. You can't do that stuff when you stink. So, yeah, just an absolute stone cold mess for the Cowboys.
And lo and behold, no Zeke, and the Cowboys have like their best rushing day of the season. Not that I think that that's going to carry over to playing Philadelphia this week, but I mean, they had their best rushing day of the season against Atlanta.
Number 2 story of the week comes from New Orleans. Lose to the Panthers. Again, the Saints lost to the Panthers on Sunday. Dennis Allen fired on Monday. I mean, not a surprise. After an incredible start to the season, the first 2 games, the Saints have lost 7 straight. Now, in fairness to Dennis Allen, I don't like Dennis Allen. I don't think he did a great job, whatever. In fairness to him, though, they have had an insane amount of injuries. Offensive line, secondary, Derek Carr, Chris Olave injury, which we'll get to. But bottom line is you just can't lose to the Panthers for your 7th straight loss and keep your job. Evan, what do you think about the Saints' decision to can Dennis Allen?
It was just a matter of time. They're going with Darren Rizzi, special teams coach, long time of the Dolphins. I think he's actually Jeff Ireland's boy from Miami. I think Jeff Ireland is kind of the guy pushing the buttons in New Orleans these days. I don't think that they're going to be successful. They were sellers at the trade deadline. They traded Marshawn Lattimore to Washington, which, by the way, we'll just hit on that here. But I think that's an awesome trade for Washington. They have to face A.J. Brown twice. They have not played the Eagles yet this season. Marshawn Lattimore is the kind of cornerback that could give A.J. Brown problems. Awesome trade by Washington. But New Orleans is, I think that they're probably going to end up going back to Rattler or maybe even Jake Hayner at some point because their season is Jover.
Yeah, so it is really bad right now. The interim coach is going to be Darren Rizzi. Darren Rizzi has been with the Saints since 2019. He's been a special teams coach really throughout his career. He did have the title of assistant head coach to Dennis Allen. He has no NFL head coaching experience. College head coaching experience was at New Haven and Rhode Island. I mean, at least the Saints are taking their medicine, right? This Marshawn Lattimore trade, they have been in cap hell for so long. They're finally going to take their medicine and go into a rebuild here. It's going to be ugly for the Saints for a while. And it doesn't help that Chris Olave now has 4 known concussions.
And he had one at Ohio State too.
So 5 known concussions in his career, 4 since October of 2022. I thought Chris Olave was going to absolutely go nuts on the Panthers on Sunday. We didn't get a chance to see if we were going to be right or we were going to be wrong on that, but scary. And I think Chris Olave probably is going to sit down for a little while here now. They also don't have Rashid Shaheed. Bub Means was hurt. Kendra Miller is on IR. Jamal Williams is doubtful. I mean, we're down to Taysom Hill, and that's it.
Taysom Hill played almost half of the offensive snaps in week 9 as well.
Really, really rough situation. If I was Darren Rizzi, it's oh, great. I have the keys now. What changes can I make? I don't have any players to make any changes. I have a mess of a secondary. I have a mess of an offensive line. I have Alvin Kamara on pace for 370 touches. I can't give him the ball anymore. He's on pace for 370 touches. I don't even know what you can do. So just a mess. Third story of the week comes from Cincinnati. So good win for the Bengals. Joe Burrow throws 5 touchdowns. They roll the Raiders. That's not the story. The story to me was Chase Brown. First game without Zach Moss, who's battling this neck injury. By the way, Zach Moss likely done for the year. We'll get to this Khalil Herbert trade in a second. But the first game without Zach Moss, Chase Brown 59 snaps, Travion Williams 7, Kendall Milton 5. Chase Brown handled 32 out of 32 running back opportunities. I was because I was taking a ton of Chase Brown, and I was oh baby, here we go. Then on Tuesday, they give up a 7th round pick to get Khalil Herbert. So I just talked to Dago a little bit about this on the Waiver Wire show. Evan, I'm curious your take, how you think the Bengals are going to play it going forward with Khalil Herbert and Chase Brown.
Well, first of all, really like the pickup. They got Khalil Herbert for nothing. I think a 7th round pick straight up.
Yeah.
I think that that's a really good move. I think that Khalil Herbert brings a little bit more juice than Zach Moss did. He doesn't bring the pass game stuff, which is really good for Chase Brown. I saw some people in our private Slack saying, hey, this is good for Chase Brown. I would agree with that. And I mean, he's going to take some carries off the plate of Chase Brown because, Khalil Herbert can run it between the tackles, but I don't think he's going to overtake. It's interesting because Chase Brown, when you watch him play, he doesn't look very big. He looks kind of small, but he's 5'10", 209. As we talked about, he had 1 million touches. He was a true workhorse in his final season at Illinois. He, for as much as he looks, kind of small on the field, and again, he's really not. He looks so explosive on the field. Every time I watched all his touches, every time he touched the ball against the Raiders, he was doing something exciting. And now he's going to get more passing game work for sure because Khalil Herbert already struggled in the passing game in Chicago. Now he's joining a new team. We have to learn all their new protections. Like this is a great run out, I think, for Chase Brown. I'd be really excited. He has like league winning potential in the second half of the year.
Yeah, I do think Khalil Herbert is capable of taking 20% of the running back carries, not touches, 20% of the running back carries, which isn't a big deal, but I don't think we're going to see 30 touch games. I don't think they want 30 touch games out of Chase Brown here. I will say, though, like Evan said, he had 350 something touches as a senior in the Big Ten at Illinois. Like, I wouldn't say he's not capable of doing it. So I don't think it's a big concern at all. I don't know if I'd call Chase Brown a winner. A win would be if Zach Moss went down after the trade deadline, they couldn't do anything. That would have been, a better win. But out of everybody they could have added, I would agree it's probably a win here for Chase Brown. Other note I had on the Bengals stuff was the Mike Gesicki. When T. Higgins has been out, it's been a printing press. On top of that, Eric All, the promising rookie, went down with a torn ACL. So Gesicki gets the Eric All injury. Also, T. Higgins still not practicing as of Monday. It's weird, Evan. Like the bigger beneficiary this season when T. Higgins has been out, it hasn't been Jamar Chase. It's been more Mike Gesicki. So, yeah, what do you think about Mike Gesicki going forward, rest of season, or any more thoughts on the Bengals?
Well, I think that, and the Bengals coaching staff sometimes gets criticized, and often rightly so. I think that they have, Mike Gesicki was drafted in 2018. He's been on, this is his third team, and no team has just went all in on using him as a big slot receiver. The Bengals have, and we've seen him flourish with big games. This was a monster game. I think he won Leone some money this weekend. By the way, shout out to Leone and Dink. Those guys are absolute studs. I mean, I don't pay attention to the leaderboard for the best DFS players in the world. I used to, but I don't anymore. I got to believe that they're like 1-2.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. But I just want to give a shout out to the Bengals coaching staff because I think that they have used they are maximizing the talent of Mike Gesicki.
Yep. All right. Fourth story of the week is Chicago. This was a spot. I know you like this spot for Caleb, Evan. It seemed like a really good spot, and they completely faceplant here in Arizona. They put up 9 points on the Cardinals. Bears are down to 4.5 yards per play on the season. That's 29th in the league. That's the same yards per play that Luke Getsy and the Raiders were getting here. We'll get to that in a second. So what's your concern level right now on Caleb and this Bears offense after a faceplant in Arizona?
I'm worried about the dysfunction in the coaching staff. The offensive line is not showing any signs of, taking any steps forward. That every time that they have to go to a backup on the offensive line, everything falls apart. I think that Caleb is quick to move in the pocket because of that. He's developing bad habits. The media here in Chicago has been trying to get Matt Eberflus fired for weeks at this point. And I mean, they're just going all in on him. I mean, they're questioning the effort of the Bears players. The Bears at the end of the first half had a situation where they were going to set up Kyler Murray to try like a Hail Mary, but instead the Cardinals they called a run play, and Amari DiMercato runs for a 53-yard touchdown, and it was just an absolute backbreaker. And the Bears never threatened again. The Bears actually started off the game pretty decent, but it was that. And then there was a play where DJ Moore, before the end of the play, like several seconds before the end of the play, just walked off the sideline.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to be like a captain and a team leader, and he hasn't been. It's I was listening to Kurt Warner this morning on the radio, and he was talking about how the offense, your boy Shane Fraudrin, runs these like long progressions, 4 read progressions, and there's no protection for the quarterback. So he's got to read these progressions super fast with no protection. And he's also a guy that likes to move in the pocket. It's just the worst possible combination for Caleb Williams. We talked about Drake May, bad situation. I mean, this is like almost just as bad of a situation. We know that they have talent in the receiver core and at tight end, but from like an environmental standpoint, this is no better than what they got going on right now in New England. It's true. It's like sad.
Okay. Well, I mean, changes that I would consider making if I was the Bears, Keenan Allen looks toast to me. I mean, absolute toast. I would get Keenan Allen at 10 targets here for 24% share. the first read should be Rome Odunze. I think he's their best receiver. The DJ Moore stuff, he needs to be punished. He is on the bench pouting. He's like yelling at coaches. He walked off the field. Looked like he was a little bit banged up, which made him walk off the field, but he came back in and was fine. You can't be doing that stuff. He's supposed to be a team captain, like Evan said. So I would have some kind of punishment on him. Now, what I will say about the Bears is they have played much, much, much better at home this season. Caleb Williams passer rating at home versus on the road is a 40-point difference. And they have 3 straight home games coming up. And in week 16 and week 17, they get Detroit at home and Seattle at home. Those are good spots, weather pending. So I don't want to give up on the Bears. They still have a ton of talent here, but I'm scared, scared about the way they are playing right now.
I had optimism because on the Bears this past week, because I thought that the Cardinals, who have no pass rush, which by the way they acknowledge they have no pass rush because today they traded for a pass rusher from Denver, but they got pressure all day on Caleb Williams. He was pressured on almost half of his dropbacks. There's a stat, I was from Next Gen, 16 different Cardinals players had a pressure against the Bears.
Yeah.
That is an insane number, especially from a team that doesn't have pressure players. So it's sad right now, but they do have New England coming up. Maybe they can get it together a little bit. They better get it together.
Yeah.
I mean, they better get it together against New England.
Fifth story of the week comes from Las Vegas. They went to Cincinnati and got smoked at one point in the game. Gardner Minshew got pulled for Desmond Ridder on Sunday night. After this game, with the Raiders sitting at 2-7, 29th in yards per play, they fire offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, offensive line coach James Craig, and quarterbacks coach Rich Scangarello. Scott Turner and Norv Turner, his dad, are in as the new offensive leaders of this team. Evan, what did you think of the Raiders' decision to clean house here on the offensive side of the ball?
Well, that's a lot of key coaches to fire at this time in the season. I mean, not that the Raiders have anything to lose. It's already over for them. But and then to go get Norv Turner off of his couch.
Yeah.
Wow. This is just what I don't. It does look like Scott Turner probably is going to take over as the Raiders play caller moving forward. We can talk about that when they're next playing a game because, again, they're going into their bye.
Yeah.
But, who cares? Like the Raiders, I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Well, I mean, look, what did you expect, right? And I don't like Luke Getsy. I don't think he did a great job. But what do you expect? You have Gardner Minshew, Desmond Ridder, Aiden O'Connell. Your number one receiver is Jacoby Myers, who, by the way, I really do like, and I'll talk about him in a second. But Jacoby Myers and Alexander Madison, and you have a rookie as your best player in Brock Bowers. Like, what'd you expect? So I don't know. It seems a little rash from me if you liked Luke Getsy 4 months ago, but whatever.
Well, apparently Antonio Pierce didn't like him. He was Antonio Pierce's third choice.
Okay.
Yeah. So, that was just always bound to be a failure. But Jacoby Myers, you're right. He's played in 4 games since Devontae Adams moved on, and he's averaging like 15 PPR points per game. What they really need to do is just build the entire offense, I think, around Brock Bowers. Just get him the ball in high percentage situations, maybe even hand it off to him because, he's the guy that can really move the offense on his own.
I mean, look, man, like we've talked about it for the last 2 weeks, ever since the Devontae Adams trade. Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers need to combine for 50% of the targets every single week. In this past game in week 9 against the Bengals, Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers combined for 19 out of the 33 targets, 58%. Anytime 2 guys are getting 58% of the targets, you're going to have value there in fantasy no matter who the quarterback is. They do head into their bye this week, then we'll come out of it to face the Dolphins. All right, let's go to the NFC now. We'll start with the Arizona Cardinals. Easy win for the Cardinals over the Bears. They did it with their defense. They were just all over Caleb, like we talked about, in this 29-9 win. A little bit frustrating game for James Conner and Trey McBride here. Conner was great as always, got knocked out at like the 1-inch line. He was getting checked for concussion, and the touchdown goes to Trey Benson. So that was kind of unfortunate. And then Trey McBride, oh my God, the most open you will ever see on a goal line play action route. And Kyler just like didn't see him. And by the time he saw him, he threw it over his head like by 20 yards. If you want to see that play, I did tweet it, but yeah, it was crazy. Evan, what do you think of Arizona's easy win over the Bears?
Yeah, it was just so easy. I mean, Kyler didn't have to really do anything productive in the box score. And I think no pass catcher had more than 35 yards in the game. The the Bears run defense has just like been non-existent since their bye. The Cardinals ran for well over 200 yards in this game. That, of course, is a little bit elevated by that Amari DiMarcado 53-yard touchdown run that should have never happened at the end of the first half. But yeah, I mean, when it's that smooth sailing, you can win. I mean, coaches love to just win with defense and running game, and that's what happened in this game.
Yeah. My only take here is the playoff schedule for the Cardinals. I want to keep reminding people: Patriots, Panthers, Rams, week 15, 16, 17. It's not going to get much better than that. If you have James Conner or Cardinals guys, rest of the season schedule is pretty strong, including the fantasy playoffs. Let's go to the Falcons. Falcons beat the Cowboys 27-21. Game didn't even feel that close. Kirk Cousins, another very efficient day, 24 pass attempts, turns that into 222 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Scary one for us. Drake London, one of our biggest positions in rankings before the season, caught a touchdown early, but then went down with injury. Considering it was a wide receiver, I was like, oh, here we go. We're toast. Drake London's going to be out for the year. Thankfully, Drake London, sounds minor, hip pointer, oblique strain type thing. They're calling him day to day. Evan, what do you think of Falcons win over the Cowboys?
Yeah, just really efficient. Not necessarily in the running game, but certainly via the pass. I mean, Kirk Cousins averaged over 9 yards per pass attempt. Darnell Mooney continues to have a true breakout year. So good in that like number 3 kind of pass catcher, that number 3 offensive option role. A little bit just Kyle Pitts is just an up and down guy. I mean, he only had 1 target in this game,
Yeah.
but Kirk Cousins only threw for 222, had 19 completions. So, and when Darnell Mooney's having another big game, and I mean, not everybody can eat every single week. Bijan had another nice game.
Yeah. My only thought going forward is like, if Drake London misses time, we're going to have a boost on Kyle Pitts' target projection, right? So I am surprised that he only saw 1 target here, considering Drake London missed almost the entire game. But like Evan said, it was not a normal script that I think you think the Falcons will typically get into. But yeah, certainly Drake London's status is something we're watching, and obviously can't just use a 1-game sample for when trying to project Kyle Pitts going forward. Panthers, rare win for Bryce Young and the Panthers here. Chuba Hubbard, I guess, is the story with 2 touchdowns, but I think the most interesting stuff there is Jonathan Brooks finally expected to play here in week 10. So the window on Chuba is shutting a little bit. We also got a lot of people who are excited about Jalen Coker. A lot of the Cokeheads were out there being like, I can't wait to play Jalen Coker this weekend. Didn't work out that well for them. Evan, what do you think of Panthers' rare win over the Saints?
Well, I thought it was kind of, I mean, as we discussed, like the Saints have bottomed out. But, I thought it was interesting that on Monday, Dave Canales was asked who his starting quarterback would be. And, I mean, it's not like Bryce Young lit it up in this game. And he said he was undecided between Bryce Young and Andy Dalton. I mean, I think that ultimately they're probably going to go with Bryce Young at least another week. But I thought that was interesting that Dave Canales did not commit to him.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if they didn't stick with Bryce Young after a win. I mean, absolutely shocked. I'd probably some gamesmanship where he thinks there's some edge in not letting their next opponent know. Their next game is in Germany against the Giants on Sunday morning. Last note I have here is the Mingo trade. So they traded away Mingo. They traded away Deontay Johnson. I'm sure they would have loved to also trade away Adam Thielen, but I'm sure no one wanted Adam Thielen either. They're going to go forward with Leggett, Coker, David Moore. It's hard
and
for me.
Jatavian Sanders, who had another nice game.
Yeah. And we talked about that on waivers too, if you wanted more takes on Jatavian Sanders. But yeah, they have a very good schedule in the fantasy playoffs. I just don't want to start these guys if Bryce Young is starting. Now, if you told me that I could get Leggett in a really good matchup with Andy Dalton starting, given this setup, I might be interested. So certainly something to watch there is the quarterback situation. There's no doubt. Let's go to the Lions. Very wet, very rainy game in Lambeau here in a big NFC North game between the Packers and the Lions. Lions take care of business 24-14 to extend their lead in the division. Jared Goff's numbers weren't big here, but he's managing the game so well. Jared Goff is now completing 75% of his passes on the season. The NFL record is 74.4, posted by Drew Brees in 2018. Evan, what do you think of Lions win up in Lambeau?
Another dominant victory. I think that they dialed up, or they put into the game plan. They considered in the game plan that there was going to be rain, and so Jahmyr Gibbs played his lowest snap rate of the season. But notes that I have are like Jamison Williams according to Dan Campbell, Jamison Williams is definitely coming back.
Yep.
This week against they have the Sunday night game against Houston.
Yep.
And then Amon-Ra St. Brown has caught 30 consecutive targets and scored a touchdown in 6 straight. Now he only has 2 100-yard games on the season because they're so dominant.
Right.
They have so many weapons, but he's held up his end of the bargain with just extreme efficiency and also touchdown scoring.
100%. And by the way, on the Jahmyr Gibbs thing, agree that was the reason. They don't have another game outside of a dome, I think, all year. Like, all their games are either home or at Indy. Oh, they play the Bears outside, and they play the 49ers outside. But other than that, every single game that they have is in a dome. Pretty crazy going forward there. Yeah, Jamison Williams obviously is back from his suspension. They did make a trade, Evan, on the defensive side. They gave a round 5 and a round 6 pick to the Browns for edge rushers Darius Smith and a 7th round pick. Obviously, they're trying to replace the Aiden Hutchinson stuff. So, yeah, you can look at a lot of stuff. Lions look like the best team, at worst, one of the best teams in the NFL, and adding Darius Smith.
At worst, one of the top 2.
Yeah.
It's them or the Chiefs.
Yeah, and adding Darius Smith certainly can help their pass rush.
And I think that their hope is that they can get back Aiden Hutchinson like for the Super Bowl or the NFC Championship game, and they can have those dudes on opposite ends. That'd be nice.
Let's go to those Packers that we just talked about. So Jordan Love, for anyone who watched this game, Jordan Love did not look like he was moving well. He tried to play through this hip/groin thing. Mobility looked really limited to me. Credit to him for gutting it out, but still, did not look good. He still threw for 273 yards. Jaden Reed was really good. I guess the good news is the bye is next. That's probably what they were thinking. They're like, hey, no matter what happens here, we have the bye, and Jordan Love will be okay. After that, what do you think of Packers' loss to the Lions, Evan?
Yeah, it was always going to be a tough situation, I think, going up against the top 2 team, even at Lambeau. With that, especially with that weather, with a quarterback who is clearly not at 100%. The Packers kept it close for a while. But at the end of the day, like the Lions just outlast. It was an unsurprising result, I think, and I don't think that there's a ton to take away because of the weather conditions, because of the opponent. They definitely need this bye, though. Josh Jacobs came into the game questionable. Jordan Love was questionable. It's a good time for the Packers to get a bye.
Yeah, agreed. They'll come out of their bye to play at Chicago. Then they play the 49ers right after the bye. They do have some really good spots late. Week 15 at Seattle for the Packers, and then in week 16, home against the Saints. They traded Marshawn Lattimore. Like, we're going to be attacking this Saints defense for sure going forward. Rams. This was a wild game in the 4 o'clock window. Puka, I thought, looked healthy despite the knee scare, but he throws like a weak punch and gets ejected from the game. That allowed Cooper Kupp to get off for 11 catches, 104 yards on 14 targets. It also allowed Demarcus Robinson to go nuts for a couple of touchdowns, including the game winner. Talked a bunch about Demarcus Robinson on the waiver wire pod. Evan, what do you think of Rams? Really saving their season. They're now back to 4-4. What do you think of the Rams win in Seattle?
Yeah. Also, looking forward, so they lost Rob Havenstein, their right tackle, to an ankle injury. It sounds like he's not going to play on Monday night. But he's not going to go on IR or anything. They have a chance to get back Steve Avila and Jonah Jackson. Steve Avila, just massive interior players that were all part of this plan that they had to just bully teams with a power gap scheme running game. And those guys have barely played this season. So all of a sudden their offensive line could come together and be very close to 100%. That's got to be looked. Yeah, I mean, they have. I'm telling you, 3 weeks ago, I was like, man, they should just trade everybody. There were rumors that they might. There were
Yeah.
rumors that they might trade Cooper Kupp. Rumors that they might trade Matthew Stafford. Puka was seeming like he wasn't. Puka played in this game but got ejected in the second quarter. But now he got that extra time off to deal with that knee injury. Now he gets an extra day going into Monday night. Like the Rams are kind of like in a really nice spot right now, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And a really nice spot for fantasy because as with Sean McVay offenses, you know exactly what you're getting. You know what the 3 wide receiver set is going to be. And you know at running back, he cannot take Kyren Williams off the field. 76 snaps for Kyren Williams in this game against the Seahawks. 1 for Blake Corum. 0 for Ronnie Rivers. I mean, unbelievable the workload that they're putting on Kyren Williams right now.
I would continue to cling tightly to Blake Corum as a bench stash because at this kind of a workload, Kyren Williams, he's made it this far.
Yeah.
But we've seen him deal with injuries in the past, and this is just an insane workload. You remember coming into the season, we were like, there's no way that they could keep doing this again. Well, they're doing it again.
Yep. Vikings. So Vikings take care of business on Sunday Night Football, 21-13 win over Joe Flacco's Colts. First of all, for me, I mean, great to see TJ Hawkinson back from his ACL and MCL tear. They did ease him in. He only played 45% of the snaps. He only ran a route on 61% of the dropbacks. Did see 4 targets for an 11% share on that, caught 3 of them for 27 yards. I thought he looked pretty good, and I assume that they'll get him ramped up here going forward. Evan, what do you think of Vikings win over the Colts on Sunday Night Football?
Another nice win. Darnold will make mistakes every now and again, but he had another really productive game. I did not look at the participation numbers yet for this one, but Cam Akers has moved ahead of Ty Chandler.
Yes.
It appears.
2 straight weeks now, Cam Akers has been ahead of Ty Chandler. Ty Chandler hasn't gotten a touch. So we updated the 1 injury away list. Cam Akers is now ahead of Ty Chandler. I think if something was to happen to Aaron Jones, though, you'd see both of them. You'd see Akers and Ty Chandler. So, yeah.
Yeah, Jordan Addison made an awesome play, a one-handed touchdown catch. He had a pretty productive game after, causing a stir on Instagram or whatever.
Yeah, by the way, Cam Akers 16 snaps in this game, Ty Chandler 0. So 16-0 Cam Akers
there you go.
Over Ty Chandler here in this game. Giants lost at home to the Commanders. The Giants are now 0-5 at home on the season. I actually thought Daniel Jones played a really good game. And I was all set to play Daniel Jones, and I got so worried about the benching stuff. I didn't make any Daniel Jones teams, but he had a really good fantasy game. He had 25 points or something like that. Now, a lot of it came late in the game, but still. The other big note I had was Tyrone Tracy, man. I mean, in concussion protocol, you're a rookie. You missed a bunch of practice time, and he still outsnaps Devin Singletary 47-18 while handling 71% of the running back touches. So that to me was the ultimate commitment that Daboll showed in Tyrone Tracy. Evan, what do you think of Giants' loss to the Commanders?
Yeah, I think that we can say with a pretty high level of confidence at this point that the Giants have just settled on Tyrone Tracy as their lead running back, and Devin Singletary is going to be the change of pace, and I think that that's the way that it should be. And I think that at the end of the day, also, Brian Daboll is a pretty smart coach. I know things haven't always gone his way, and he very well might be fired after this season. But I think that that's mostly because of the quarterback.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned, Daniel Jones was by far the Giants' highest graded player at PFF in this game, and he'll get another game. They're going to Munich, Germany.
Yeah.
This week for an absolute barn burner against the Panthers. I mean, I can't wait. It'll be a good week to get some extra rest and sleep in to the noon games.
Yeah, just for people that are looking at our projections, when we had our Daniel Jones projection up early in the week, people were like, you guys have Daniel Jones for more than this guy and this guy and this guy who are better quarterbacks. There's no doubt. What Daniel Jones gives you is an ability to run for 50 yards and a touchdown in a game. He has Malik Neighbors. A lot of these other pocket passers like Derek Carr or whatever, they just don't have that. So, yeah, it's going to be volatile on Daniel Jones. But when he plays the way he did on Sunday, he's going to score fantasy points. There's absolutely no doubt whatsoever. Eagles. I mean, Eagles dominated this game defensively. Saquon did one of the most insane plays you'll ever see on a football field with a reverse hurdle. I'm sure everyone has seen it by now, but they had to hang on in this game. They had some crazy turnovers late. Nick Sirianni made some wild decisions, and they barely hang on for a 28-23 win over the Jaguars here. Evan, what'd you think of Eagles win against the Jags?
Yeah, they just made a bunch of spectacular plays. I mean, right now, like the rhetoric surrounding the Eagles is like, "Yo, this team is so talented," but the coaching. Um, but I mean, they have like just an incredible. They might have the most talent on offense of any team in the NFL. Like, I don't think that would be crazy to say. At the same time, we need to make sure that AJ Brown
Yeah,
is healthy.
seems
He
seems fine. They're calling him day to day, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I worry that he might just miss one
Yeah,
game. But because his MRI on his knee came back positively, but he may still miss some time. I don't know. They look sweet out there in those uniforms.
yeah, the Kelly
The
Greens.
Keller Greens are nice. They're super talented. Their offensive line is kicking ass even without Jordan Mailata. Like they have as good offensive talent as anyone.
Yeah, so on the AJ Brown thing, like I said, they're calling him day to day. Doesn't seem anything major at all. You saw what happened though. As soon as AJ Brown went out, I mean, as soon as AJ Brown went out, Devonta Smith started going nuts. He made some great plays down both sidelines. Huge boost to Devonta Smith, obviously, if AJ Brown is out. Saquon, man, 30 more touches here. And the Eagles did not get tackled on the one in this game. There were also no PI in the end zone. And so Saquon scored twice. And really, like, that's what it comes down to. If the Eagles do not get tackled at the 1 yard line or have pass interference in the end zone, Saquon's going to score a ton of touchdowns. If they get tackled at the one, he's not, because they continue to do the tush push. By the way, Jalen Hurts is running so well, man. Like he is moving in a way he was not moving last year.
I kind of noticed that in their previous game too.
Yeah. I mean, he looks so fast. All right. 49ers. So 49ers were on a bye in week 9. They will emerge from the bye to face the Bucs Sunday. And at long last, expected, cautiously optimistic that we're going to see Christian McCaffrey make his return, make his 2024 season debut here in week 10 against the Bucs. There's video out there of him practicing. It's really hard to say what his role is going to be immediately. I have a few thoughts which I can get to, but yeah, Evan, what do you think about the CMC situation? Mason, Garendo, anything else on 49ers as they come out of their bye?
Well, I think that all signs have been positive up until this point, and today Schefter was on ESPN again saying that the expectation is that Christian McCaffrey is going to play, and so I fully expect to see him against Tampa Bay.
Would you think that he'll lose more work than usual? Historically, we have seen the 49ers kind of throw their guys back into the fire and give them full blast when they come off injury. This injury strikes me as a little bit different where it lingered for so long. It aggravated so many times. Could it be an overuse issue? My initial thought when we were working on projections for the guys, I was like maybe 70% of the work when normally I'd be like 90, 95, so any thoughts on that? And then who do you think it would be, Mason or Garendo, picking up the rest of the slack?
Well, Garendo has had flashes, no question, but I think it will be Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason is coming off that AC joint sprain.
Yeah.
But I think that that is theoretically a day-to-day injury, and coming off the bye, you would think that he would be good to go. He had Christian McCaffrey was dealing with Achilles stuff in both of his legs.
Yeah.
So I think it would make all the sense in the world for them to use, like on base runs, Jordan Mason more, and then kind of use Christian McCaffrey more on the in space stuff, at least initially. Once he builds up confidence, he's able to practice in full, on a consistent basis. Then maybe they can get back to the full blast workloads.
What
I got to think at first. Jordan Mason has kind of earned it too. I mean, he did really well in the first half of the season.
What if they use Christian McCaffrey like the Dolphins are using Devon Achane right now? 10, 11 carries, 6 or 7 targets. Like, to me, that would be an awesome way to use Christian McCaffrey for both real life and fantasy. We don't need Christian McCaffrey carries from 1st and 10 on his own 20. Like, I don't need that. I don't think the 49ers do either. So,
Right.
Yeah. Last note on the 49ers, I think Jawan Jennings is going to be back here. And Juwan Jennings gave them some really good snaps and routes this season. Last season, with Brandon Ayuk down, I think that's who they'll trust the most. But there's also a chance for a post-bye rookie bump for Ricky Pearsall. So that's something that I'm watching as well. Who's going to be playing more? Who's going to earn more targets between Juwan Jennings and Pearsall? My bet right now would be on Juwan Jennings, but I'm not like overly confident about that whatsoever. Let's go to the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks had a 13-3 lead at the half in this game, playing without DK Metcalf. They end up losing in overtime to the Rams. I thought Geno had some really uncharacteristic bonehead plays, especially in the red zone, but he was also cooking a lot to the story of the week, which was Jackson Smith and Jigba, 7 catches, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also had 2 more catches of like 35 plus yards called back by holding. I mean, absolutely superstar performance here for Jackson Smith and Jigba. Evan, what do you think about that when DK Metcalf gets back? And by the way, DK Metcalf is expected back here for week 10.
Yeah, and I think that Noah Fant will be back as well. The good news is that JSN showed that he can do that. He's had like multiple really big games this season. He's also had games where he's just like, you don't know where he is. But man, yeah, making plays downfield. I mean, he also had a bunch of yards called back, especially in the first half due to penalty. I mean, he could have had a 200-yard receiving game.
Oh, yeah. Easily.
Yeah, so that's nice to know that he can do that. It's just, hey, Metcalf and Noah Fant are coming back, and they're going to occupy a lot of
right
together, a lot of target share. So
my whole thing was in this game, he got downfield, 20.2 yard average depth of target for JSN. He has been he was down at like 6 yards last year under Fraudrin, and this year he's had a ton of games under 7 yards, which was like, why are you using that guy this way? It takes DK Metcalf out for him to realize he can get down the field. I don't know, but I hope, and I'm sure the Seahawks coaching staff is watching this. I hope that you'll continue to let JSN get deep down the field. So
another ongoing concern for the offense, and maybe one of the reasons why this coordinator, Ryan Grubb, and the previous coordinator, Fraudrin, use him on such shallow routes because their offensive line cannot protect at all. Geno Smith was under pressure in this game on 60% of his dropbacks, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel for the Seattle pass protection whatsoever.
Yeah.
So, I feel like they think that giving JSN all these short routes to give Geno Smith an option underneath when he's hurried is the way to go. And so I wonder if they just go right back to that when DK comes back.
Yep, I think that's totally fair. Last note I had on Seattle was I thought this was going to be a big Kenneth Walker game. I played a ton of Kenneth Walker, and I was right in terms of volume. He out-carried Zach Charbonnet 25-2 and also caught 3 more balls, but he didn't break one, and that was really disappointing for me because when you play Kenneth Walker and he gets 28 touches, I'm like, oh my God, I have a printing press because this guy's going to break one for 40 or 50 at some point, but just didn't happen in this game. And so he kind of bricked out, did Kenneth Walker. Bucks. Got to give credit to Baker last night, man. No Chris Godwin, no Mike Evans, no Jalen McMillan, and Baker Mayfield goes into Arrowhead and almost pulls off a comeback win by throwing to things like Kate Otten, Sterling Shepard, Ryan Miller, Raheem Jarrett led all wide receivers in routes, and Baker still almost won in Arrowhead. I was impressed, man. Honestly, Evan, what do you think of Bucks' performance against the Chiefs last night?
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is, like, Baker Mayfield has been having a really good season, with the exception of maybe 1 or 1.5 or 2 games. He's been dialed in this season, and it kind of almost hasn't totally mattered the health of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So, I mean, I think he's taken a step forward actually from last season when he had the career rebirth in Tampa Bay. Kate Otten, Kate Otten's season has started to run. You remember that season where everything fell by the wayside for the Rams, and then Tyler Higbee just went off in the second half of the season? I feel like that's almost the same dynamic as what's going on with Kate Otten here. But Kate Otten is showing that he can absolutely play. They go in their bye this week, right?
I didn't check that, but sounds right.
I believe so. There are 6 teams on bye this week, and I think that they're one of them. I don't think they're getting Mike Evans back like right away,
Yeah.
but he will be back eventually. Chris Godwin is obviously not coming back. Maybe they get back Jalen McMillan after the bye, but I mean he's got some reinforcements coming. But I think the big story is Cade Otton. Cade Otton right now, even if Evans comes back, not after the bye, he's coming back in a few weeks after that. But I think that Cade Otton is a guy that we can lean on.
Bucks actually play the 49ers here this week, and then they have their bye.
Oh,
Bucks bye is in week 11, not
right.
week 10. Agree on Cade Otton, man. I mean, he was a win sprinter, but sometimes just guys who are out there all the time can get there when there's injuries around them. That's exactly what's happening right now. I mean, he's an absolute turbo smash. It's just hard for me to play other guys. Like they're splitting the backfield three ways. Wide receiver is a mess until Mike Evans gets back. It's going to be tough for me to keep clicking or click at all Bucks guys outside of Cade Otton, I think.
Okay, so I think initially when Mike Evans got hurt, all right, so now we've established that the bye for Tampa Bay is in week 11.
Yep.
The initial hope was that Mike Evans will be back in week 12, the week after the bye.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hopefully. Last NFC team here is the Washington football team, aka the Commanders. The late news that Brian Robinson was a late scratch, that was one of the more surprising ones we've had. All the reporting was that Brian Robinson was going to be able to play in this game. He ends up not being able to play. That thrusts Austin Eckler into a featured role. He was playing really well and then barely played late. I don't know what happened to Austin Eckler. I'm trying to find out on that. The B-Rob injury doesn't sound overly serious either, but I guess we're bearing the lead, Evan. I mean, Jaden Daniels, you can make a case for NFL MVP for Jaden Daniels. And he's also like minus 2,000 or something insane now to be the offensive rookie of the year is Jaden Daniels. Another impressive performance, Evan, what do you think of Commanders' win over the Giants?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that Jaden Daniels played solid, certainly. I mean, you can look at his efficiency, 9.5 yards per pass attempt. He didn't get where we totally wanted him to go because we both had him as our pull-up play. I think he was at like 19 points, maybe 18 or 19 points.
Yeah. But McLaurin scored 2 touchdowns, so the skinny got there, Jaden to
The skinny
McLaurin.
got
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah, I mean, we've come to expect quality performances each and every week from Jaden Daniels, and I would think that Brian Robinson seemed very close. I expect him back in their next game.
I thought, and one other story from this game, Noah Brown led them in targets. I mean, he's playing a ton.
That's not the first time that's happened, by the way.
Not the first time, and over 30% of the targets, I believe, in this game for Noah Brown. I mean, he gave the Texans. I still want to know what happened. How the Texans got rid of Noah Brown for no reason, seemingly. They could really use Noah Brown right now, could the Texans, given the injuries to Nico Collins and Steph Diggs, but Commanders are liking having him. He is their number 2 wide receiver, playing reasonably. And yeah, agree with Evan. I know we talked about it at the top, but the Marshawn Lattimore trade, I mean, Marshawn Lattimore is still just 28 years old. He is going to immediately boost this secondary in a big way. And I think Commanders defense is actually going to be pretty solid here going forward. Let's move it over to the AFC now. We'll start with the Baltimore Ravens. Another offensive explosion for the Ravens here. Beat up on, I guess, what was thought of as a really good Broncos defense. But Broncos went to the Baltimore, just got overwhelmed 41-10. Could have been worse, man. I mean, in the first half, Lamar Jackson and Zay Flowers were unstoppable. Flowers is so good. Then again, they barely had to throw it at all in the second half. Lamar finishes with just 19 pass attempts, still finishes with 23 fantasy points. Evan, what do you think of Ravens rolling the Broncos at home?
Yeah, and Derrick Henry had 23 for 106 and 2 touchdowns and 1 target for 27 yards. And after the game, was talking about I didn't play my best today. Like he's got more in the tank. I mean, he's been unbelievable. I know you are really pushing this Derrick Henry MVP thing.
Well, I don't. I think most people who know me understand that I don't think a running back could ever really actually be an MVP. However, I happen to have some outrageous tickets on Derrick Henry at 150-1 to be the MVP. So yes, I'm trying to make people at least think through it.
Yeah. You're trying to take polls and stuff. I mean, the day before the election, no less. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know. It's like the Ravens have scored 40 plus points in 3 of their last 5 games. The notes that I have are Keaton Mitchell was designated for return,
Yeah.
and he was full practice on Monday.
Yep.
And I think that he's worth adding maybe in deeper leagues, because if something were to happen to Derrick Henry, who's had sizable workloads, then I don't think it's crazy to say that Keaton Mitchell could become the number one rusher besides Lamar Jackson, okay, but the number one rushing running back for the Ravens were something to happen to Derrick Henry. The other note that I had was that Isaiah Likely suffered a hamstring injury, and I think he only played like 16 or 17 snaps in the Week 9 game, and he was listed as DNP on Monday. And if he were to not play, more for Charlie Kolar, but certainly more for Mark Andrews.
Yeah. I
They're
think
playing
that's
on Thursday night against the Bengals.
correct. That's a really sneaky spot there. I'm not sure a lot of people were tracking the Isaiah Likely issue. Keaton Mitchell, if you can go back and like just go to YouTube and look at Keaton Mitchell highlights from last year, dude was shot out of an absolute cannon. Now he's coming off an ACL. Is he going to be able to do that once again? I don't know, but I agree with Evan. If you're in a deep league, he's an interesting thought for sure. John Harbaugh said, Keaton Mitchell does indeed have a chance to play Thursday night. Deontay Johnson made his Ravens debut in this game here in Week 9. He only played 17 snaps. He only ran 6 routes compared to 18 routes for Bateman, 16 for Zay Flowers. So kind of, at least for now, as we expected, Deontay Johnson, the third wide receiver.
There were some people saying that they thought that Deontay Johnson could jump in and become the Ravens' number one receiver. I think Zay Flowers has played far too well for them to even implement that into the game plan.
I'm not even convinced that Deontay Johnson's better than Rashad Bateman. There is some that the NFL does not think of Deontay Johnson the way that the internet does. I'm pretty convinced about that. Let's go to Buffalo. Slow start for the Bills here in a home game against the Miami Dolphins. They only scored 6 points in the first half. Second half, though, they get it going. They scored 24 points on the back of 3 Josh Allen touchdown passes, win 30-27. I think closer than a lot of people thought it was going to be here, Evan, but certainly a division game. What do you think of Bills' performance against the Dolphins?
Speaking of MVPs, I think we need to be talking about Josh Allen. He should be right there.
He's the favorite now.
Is he the favorite? Nice.
Yeah.
Because, there have been a lot of moving parts around him. There's something in the water with these wrist injuries for the Bills. They just lost Dwayne Smoot for the season to a wrist injury. Amari Cooper missed this game with a wrist injury. Keon Coleman was still, as of this podcast, undergoing tests for a wrist injury, and he's a guy who has really turned it on over the past 3 or 4 weeks. He would be a big blow. So that's a situation to monitor. And it seems like Amari Cooper is just day to day / week to week, but he did not play here. So things to keep an eye on.
I mean, beneficiaries of that were Dalton Kincaid. He saw 10 targets in this game, turned into 4 catches for 32 yards. Really frustrating. Khalil Shakir has been severely outplaying Kincaid, and honestly, a lot of these wide receivers. So anytime there's an injury, like someone played Shakir against me in cash, and I was like on FanDuel, I think it was, and I was looking at his team. I was like, you know what? That was probably a pretty sharp play, and so yeah. The other thing I wanted to note here, Ray Davis had 17 DraftKings points, had that huge play. He only played 9 snaps in the entire game, so I don't want to get out ahead of ourselves on Ray Davis, but clearly is explosive. And if something were to happen to James Cook, he would be a priority. Ray Davis is high up on our 1 injury away list, which you can find on the site. Browns. As expected, Jameis comes back to earth. We talked about this on Friday night. Jameis comes back to earth in a difficult matchup against the Chargers. But when you play Jameis, you know what you get. He threw it 46 times. I mean, he was out there chucking. He only completed 56% of his passes and threw 3 interceptions. Doesn't matter. He just keeps chucking and keeps chucking and keeps chucking. And now we get Cedric Tillman as I kind of want to start Cedric Tillman every week, certainly against the Saints here coming up. So, Evan, what do you think of Brown's latest Jameis experience?
Just kind of had that expectation that he was going to take a step back. The Chargers have played really solid. I mean, they are. Daniel Jeremiah is talking about how Jesse Minter, their defensive coordinator, is going to be a head coach sooner rather than later. And I would agree with that. They've gotten the most out of their guys, and it was never going to be an easy one for Jameis here. But yeah, I mean, Cedric Tillman he should have been picked up, several weeks back. Yeah. He has the body type, the movement skills, the ball skills, the quarterback, like checks almost every box to be like, a sneaky number one receiver, and that's what he's been since Jameis came under center.
Absolutely. And yeah, they play the Saints in the Dome this week upcoming. We're going to be talking about this spot a lot on Friday, especially since Marshawn Lattimore is now no longer a member of the Saints. By the way, Nick Chubb did outcarry Jerome Ford 15-2 here, which actually surprised me. But again, as we talked about last week, brutal efficiency from Nick Chubb. Since his return, he has not topped 3.3 yards per carry. Now, yards per carry is not like a great stat whatsoever. It's not that sticky, whatever, but it's still scary to me that Nick Chubb has not found any running room yet whatsoever. Let's go to the Denver Broncos. Broncos get absolutely smoked here by the Ravens. I mean, they got beat so bad. I don't really even have any notes or takeaways here. I was worried that a young team with maybe an overperforming defense goes to Baltimore and gets overwhelmed, and that is exactly what happened here. Evan, any thoughts on Broncos' performance in Baltimore?
I did not have any great notes either. They've got Kansas City coming up, and I wonder if the luck is starting to run out a little bit on the Broncos.
Yeah, I will say Cortland Sutton had a very productive fantasy game. When you play the Ravens, that can happen. Like you can get down
Yeah.
the field against them and make plays. Different story against the Chiefs, though. For
Yeah,
sure.
it's been week in and week out.
Yeah.
The number one receivers against the Ravens have been crushing, and Cortland Sutton did that.
Let's go to the Houston Texans. So this was the Thursday night game against the Jets in MetLife. Texans played this game without Nico Collins, without Steph Diggs. I know I'm not allowed to say his name without everyone getting all pissed off at me, but Tank Dell balled in this game. 6 catches, 126 yards on a 30% target share against a good Jets secondary. So that was good to see that like Tank Dell still has it in him. And by the way, vibes on Nico Collins don't seem great right now. They declined to rule him in on Monday, even though there's been speculation about that. So yeah, I mean, good to see it from Tank Dell. Evan, what do you think of Texans game against the Jets last Thursday?
Yeah, I mean, I'm also skeptical that Nico Collins is going to be back this week. Just a really frustrating situation. I mean, they built this offense around Nico Collins, Steph Diggs, Tank Dell. Now Stephon Diggs is gone. Nico Collins, continues to be sort of out indefinitely. Tank Dell has really only had one good game, maybe two.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean it's been a disappointing season for a team that I thought had Super Bowl potential.
And again, in this game, the offensive line struggled. CJ Stroud took 8 more sacks. CJ Stroud completed 11 out of 30 passes in this game. I mean, that's like Anthony Richardson type numbers from CJ Stroud. I was thinking
He's just under pressure almost every play.
Right. And I was thinking that this team could
and that's against a Jets defense that doesn't necessarily like pressure the quarterback very well.
Right. I was thinking this team could really use their bye, like get Nico healthy, get a reset. Their bye isn't until week 14. I mean, who in the NFL came up with this that we have all these buys in week 14? It's so late. It messes with fantasy. Like no more week 14 buys. It's crazy.
But no buys in week 8.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't make any sense. By the way,
and then 2 teams on bye in week 9. You're right. It doesn't make any sense.
It's ridiculous, man. I mean, it's not fair. I mean, forget about fantasy. I don't really think it's that fair to the Texans either to have it so late, but whatever.
It's not fair to the matchups column either.
It's not fair to the matchups column either. All right, let's go to the Indianapolis Colts. So Anthony Richardson, as expected, watched this game, and he got to watch Joe Flacco play terrible. I hope he's learning a lot. I hope he's learning a lot from Joe Flacco taking some insane sacks, missing a ton of throws. And maybe we can give Joe Flacco a pass here. This was on the road against Brian Flores' defense. It was a tough spot. But yeah, Flacco was bad, I thought. I thought he missed some relatively easy throws. So, Evan, what do you think of Colts game against the Vikings here?
Well, I also give my hats off to Brian Flores again, whose defense has overachieved all season. They had like a 2-week blip there where they gave up a lot of points, but they continue to be, over the course of the season, they've been one of the best defenses in the league. The Colts were without their starting left tackle, Bernard Raymond, who's been an absolute stud for them that they got like in the 4th round a couple years ago. And they had to start this 3rd-round rookie out of Pitt, Matt Goncalves. So they were at a disadvantage there. They couldn't run the ball against Minnesota. And I mean, Flacco, like Kevin Cole, he does his own thing now, but he worked for PFF, bunch of different RotoViz. He put up like EPA earned by Joe Flacco over the course of his like 10 starts dating back to with Cleveland. And I mean, it's like gotten progressively worse every game. And this was his worst out of the 9 or 10 starts or whatever that he's had.
Yeah.
So, and the last 3 have also all been negative EPA. So, maybe his luck is running out.
Yeah. I mean, there was a report out there that they plan to start Joe Flacco for the rest of the season. I don't know if I buy that, but we'll see. The other thing,
Well, Shane Steichen was asked on Monday, and he qualified whether or not Joe Flacco was going to be the starter by saying, "Yeah, Joe Flacco is our starter right now."
right. I'm curious what you think about this Michael Pittman stuff. My take is that Michael Pittman's trying to play through his back injury, and he has like shouldn't have. He should have just gone on IR because you remember, like the report was he's going on IR for his back, and then all of a sudden he was like, "Oh no, I'm playing." And maybe that was a mistake because he does not look. I'm not saying Michael Pittman's like some great player or some dynamic player, but he's better than what he's looked like so far. Josh Downs is running circles around Michael Pittman, so yeah, it's tough for me to even click Michael Pittman right now. He was only 5,800 on FanDuel, like free, and I almost played him at the last second. I got off it, but yeah, what do you think of the Michael Pittman stuff?
I don't think you could play him right now, unfortunately.
Yeah,
By the way, the Colts' schedule is brutal coming up. They've got the Bills this week, and then, they have the Jets at the Jets, and then they have the Lions
Hmm.
over their next 3 games. I mean, they could lose all 3 of those
yeah.
easily.
And at that point, you got
And then you go back to A. Rich.
exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Jaguars. So Jaguars did mount a late comeback in Philly, but they come up short, lose 28-23. Just a brutal day for the passing game and Trevor Lawrence, even though Brian Thomas did end up playing. Trevor Lawrence with a 32 QBR here. Concerning, man. I know that Christian Kirk was down. Maybe Brian Thomas wasn't himself here, and Gabe Davis didn't play, but still scary. Evan, what do you think of Jaguars' latest loss this time to the Eagles?
Eagles got a lot of pressure on Trevor Lawrence, and the Jaguars could not run the ball in this game. And when you can't protect your quarterback, you can't run the ball, like you're not going to have a good day offensively. It was kind of like a minor miracle that they put up 23 against Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean, obviously my favorite play here weekly is Brian Thomas, but again, I think that Evan Ingram needs to be someone that is a priority. Like he had a 32% target share here, and that doesn't count the 2-point conversion that he made. 32% target share, like that's kind of what I expect going forward. It's not going to be exciting. It's going to be a lot of short area stuff, but man, Evan Ingram could see 8, 9, 10 targets in a lot of games here going forward. So don't want to panic on him at all, even though he was kind of meh against the Eagles. Chiefs last night. This was an uglyish game. It was raining. Somehow Patrick Mahomes survives an injury scare. Chiefs find a way again to win in overtime to beat the Bucs. They move to 8-0. I mean, 8-0 with this. I think the Lions are better, but I guess we'll see. Evan, what do you think of Chiefs game last night against the Bucs?
Well, the big story to me is that DeAndre Hopkins looked healthy.
Yeah.
And he was making contested catches, and he was making plays downfield. And Patrick Mahomes is already trusting him. He wound up with 8 for 86 and 2 touchdowns. And I would feel confident in him moving forward, although he does get Patrick Surtain in week 10.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the way that he looked, like I feel really good about the way that he looked.
The other side of the spectrum is Xavier Worthy. So very early in the game, Xavier Worthy is wide open. I mean, they just blew a coverage, left him wide open. Mahomes made a good, not a great throw. It's not perfect, but it was good enough. Xavier Worthy, just like no awareness of where he is on the field, ends up stepping out of bounds before he can catch the ball. Missed another catch later. Xavier Worthy lost 10 yards on a reverse. I mean, and meanwhile, you have DeAndre Hopkins going off. So, like, it's as bad as it gets right now for Xavier Worthy. A lot of people are asking, should I drop Xavier Worthy from my team? I don't really have a problem with that right now.
Either.
But, Evan, what
in
do you
4
think?
games since Rashee Rice went out, Xavier Worthy has receiving yardage totals of 25, 19, 37, and 0.
Yeah.
So he's not giving you anything, and I wouldn't be opposed to dropping him either.
God. I mean, and late in the game, it seemed like they kind of lost trust in him. They threw like a hot screen to Mecole Hardman. I was like, how is that not go to Xavier Worthy? You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, I feel like they're losing some faith, even though he's out there a ton still.
Juju was out with a hamstring.
Yeah.
Um, McCole Hardman suffered a shoulder injury in the game.
Yeah.
And then one other note is that Isaiah Pacheco, Rap Sheet today reported that they expect him back by late November.
Yeah.
So we got about 3 more weeks.
Kareem Hunt's been so good. I'm curious what you think the split will be when Pacheco gets back. Kareem Hunt has not been explosive, but he has given them like, dragging guys 3, 4,
Right.
5 yards at a time.
Yeah, he's been running hard. But Pacheco gives them that big play ability. I think that that they'll do hot hand stuff.
Yeah. Last thing on Worthy. So his completion percentage, Patrick Mahomes' completion rate when targeting Worthy this year, 48%. Targeting everyone else, 73%. Now I understand his ADOT is much higher. All the target, Xavier Worthy has an ADOT of around 11 yards. Targeting everyone else, it's far, far lower. But at 11 yards is not even that deep of an ADOT. To have a catch rate of 48% on an 11-yard ADOT is still terrible. So bad signs on Xavier Worthy for sure. Chargers. Another impressive passing day for Justin Herbert. In a game they controlled the entire way against the Browns, Justin Herbert dropped back 34 times versus 19 running back carries. Over the last 4 weeks, the Chargers are second in pass rate over expectation behind only the Bengals. I didn't see this coming, man, that Roman and Harbaugh would lean into the pass at this rate, but Justin Herbert's playing so well. I give him credit for it. Evan, what do you think of Chargers' latest win this time, an easy one over the Browns?
Yeah, almost 10.5 yards for pass attempt. And this was for Justin Herbert, which is an incredible mark. And this was also on a day where Joe Alt kind of got his butt handed to him by Myles Garrett. And Joe Alt has had like a bunch of clean sheets this season where he like doesn't even give up a pressure. But he got eaten for lunch by Myles Garrett in this game, and Justin Herbert still played really, really well. Quentin Johnston has popped out, a couple weeks this year. He missed a couple weeks with an ankle injury too. But I mean, he's a big receiver who can run.
Yeah.
And the coaching with the Chargers, it goes to show you what a difference coaching and having like a philosophy that you go in with and you're willing to change a little bit. I mean, they're like one of the best coach teams in the NFL this year.
They're doing a great job. There's no doubt. Quentin Johnston did benefits from a couple of blown coverages on the Browns, but he's played well all year, man. Quentin Johnston has been banged up lately, but he's played well all year. Oh, last thing on this was J.K. Dobbins. Efficiency again, 1485-2. Vidal got 5 carries. I know Kirk Cousins is the favorite for comeback player of the year. To me, it should be Dobbins. And we're doing an awards show on Thursday. What Dobbins has come back from, to me, is like incredibly impressive. Given his position, given his injuries, I doubted him before the year. I had a big fade on J.K. Dobbins, and he's just shoved it right down my throat. Dolphins. Tua was really sharp in this game in Buffalo, man. 25 of 28 for 231 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Now, what the Bills do to you, and I know this is kind of extreme, and maybe this is part of this Achane stuff, they try to keep everything in front. They try to make you throw everything short, and that's what they've done. Devon Achane, 12 carries, 8 catches here, turns that into 121 total yards and 2 touchdowns. Dolphins lose this game, but it was pretty encouraging, I thought, to see the way Tua played and the way Achane continues to play. Evan, what do you think of Dolphins' loss in Buffalo?
Yeah, well, I mean, every game that Tua has played this year, Achane has absolutely crushed. I mean, he's been a top 3 fantasy running back in every single game. And that's kind of what I was hoping for from him entering the season. He's delivered when Tua has been in there. When Tua has not been in there, Achane has pretty much been garbage. Yeah. So hopefully Tua can stay upright the rest of the way. Raheem Mostert lost another fumble in this game. He has 6 fumbles over his last 16 games. So I wonder, and look, this is Mike McDaniel's boy. Mike McDaniel probably still even trusts him after all this, but has been with him for, I think, multiple teams in the past, certainly in San Francisco. But I mean, they've got Jalen Wright sitting there who's, potentially more, Mostert's plenty explosive, but Jalen Wright is bigger, probably faster at this stage of their respective careers. I think that at any point, I think that Mostert could start to at least lose some work to Jalen Wright.
Yeah, so they punished Mostert after the fumble. It was mostly Jalen Wright behind Devon Achane after that fumble that everyone was referring to. Like Evan, I'm a bit skeptical that they actually give up on Mostert, but I think it's still worth probably owning, depending how deep your league is, worth owning Jalen right here. The pass game role for Achan has buried Jalen Waddle. I mean, in these 4 Tua games, Tyreek Hill leads with 32 targets. Achan is second with 30. In Tua's 4 starts, Jalen Waddle's only seen 17 targets. And I'm not going to sit here and say it's because Jalen Waddle's not good. I think everyone thinks Jalen Waddle's good. The Dolphins think Jalen Waddle's good. They gave him a huge contract. I can't believe that they're not using him at all. Evan, any thoughts on rest of season outlook for Jalen Waddle here? I mean, people are asking about dropping Jalen Waddle at this point too.
Yeah, I wouldn't drop him. Just if something happens to Tyreek, I think that he's right back. Even if something happens to Achan, we've seen him get hurt. But I would understand being hesitant to play him at this point. I mean, the numbers bear it out. It's like he's getting buried in targets by both Tyreek and Achan whenever Achan is in there.
I mean, Jalen Waddle's still only 25 years old, and they just gave him a huge deal. Like, I would not be giving up on Jalen Waddle. These Buffalo matchups, I think, are ideal for the Achan stuff, but, you know, it's not that many targets to go around, is what it is. Patriots. So, crazy play to end the game. Drake May sends this game in Tennessee to overtime with, I mean, it looked like my son out there, like running around, just waiting for someone to get open for like 20 seconds. Finally, trucks it up as he's getting hit. They send it to overtime, but they still lose 20-17. I mean, we know what we're getting here on a weekly basis. Drake May threw 2 interceptions. He lost a fumble. He was sacked 4 times. I mean, we know, right? He has a woeful offensive line. His best pass catcher is Hunter Henry. But you can kind of see it on May when he makes these plays. He ran for 95 yards here. He has plenty of arm talent. So you can definitely see it on Drake May. Evan, what do you think of Patriots' overtime loss to the Titans?
All I can think about is the Patriots and Drake May going to Soldier Field this week against Caleb, and just if they if they somehow beat the Bears, who look like trash in 2 games since their bye, then everybody is going to be like, "Oh, we should have taken Drake May too," like we got the worst one again, but I mean, Drake May is like I mean, imagine if they had stuck with Jacoby Brissett. Like Drake May is like a playable dude. He is an incredible runner.
Yeah.
Oh my god, man!
Him and Bo Nix both. I've been so impressed with them running. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, Drake May. I mean, also is like a creative runner. The way he kind of like makes his body like fit through holes. I mean, he's a stud. I mean, wait till they get him some help. He has like no help right now. But,
for sure.
Wait till they get him some help.
Yeah, and we had Titans projected for the most points out of any defense this week, and I was like, man, I don't know. Like Titans defense isn't that good. Just playing defenses against this Patriots offense, period, is going to be a winning strategy, I think. Jets. Jets snap a 5-game losing streak by beating the Texans on Thursday Night Football. We saw Davante Adams get going in a big way. We saw one of the sickest touchdown catches you'll ever see by Garrett Wilson in this game. And by the way, Devonta Smith had an insane touchdown catch also. But important to me was Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson combined to see 66% of the targets. They accounted for 16 of Aaron Rodgers' 22 completions. Meanwhile, Mike Williams has been traded, which we'll get to here in a second. And Alan Lazard is on IR with a chest injury. I mean, it is going to be profitable in fantasy if you can get these guys to 60% of the targets, Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams. Evan, what did you think of Jets' win over the Texans Thursday night?
Well, it was a slog in the first half, and then in the second half, like Aaron Rodgers turned into like vintage Aaron Rodgers, and he was spraying the ball wherever he wanted. That was good to see. He's still 41 years old. I mean, he doesn't have the mobility that he used to, and the offensive line can be really shaky. But he's got 2 receivers that are ballers. So I mean, he's going to pop up for big games going forward. That's what I got on the Jets. I don't even have any notes.
Okay. So we'll talk about the Pittsburgh side.
Third receiver going forward.
Right. So we'll talk about the Pittsburgh side in a second here. But on the Jets side of this, as I mentioned, Alan Lazard's on IR. Mike Williams is gone. I think it'll be a rotation between Malachi Corley, who made one of the biggest bonehead plays you'll ever see on Thursday night, and Tayshaun Gibson, or I'm sorry, Xavier Gibson. They will like rotate for the wide receiver 3 role. I'm not sure it matters though, man. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to throw to Brees, Devontae, and Garrett Wilson on every play, and a little bit of Conklin.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, I think it'll be Xavier Gibson. That play by Malachi Corley, that's the exact kind of play where Aaron Rodgers can be like, no,
Yeah.
no.
All right. Steelers were on a bye in week 9. They will come out of it to face the Commanders in a big game on Sunday. The big news was, at long last, the Steelers on Tuesday, just ahead of the deadline, finally landed a wide receiver. Seems like they had been chasing a wide receiver forever. They were heavily linked to Brandon Ayuk in August. They were linked to DeAndre Hopkins. They were linked to Devontae Adams. They settled to get big Mike Williams. They gave up a round 5 pick to the Jets to get him. I think a pretty sharp deal for the Steelers because he fits with Russell Wilson. Mike Williams wins deep down the field on contested catches. That is where Russell Wilson likes to throw the football. So I thought it was a pretty good deal for the Steelers. Evan, what do you think of the Mike Williams trade?
Yeah, I like it stylistically as well. Mike Williams has also had success as an interior receiver when he's been given the opportunity. Remember, he would have those like bursts with the Chargers where, if all of a sudden they started calling him stuff closer to the line of scrimmage and closer to the center quarterback exchange, and he would have those bursts, but then they'd go back to using him as like a perimeter X receiver. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how they use him. I just think that the rapport that Russell Wilson and George Pickens have formed is like, that's really still the story. I think that Mike Williams gives them, a better option than Van Jefferson on the other side. I just don't know if he's going to all of a sudden become a fantasy factor in what remains one of the NFL's run heaviest offenses.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's going to be really hard for a Russell Wilson, Arthur Smith offense to support 2 wide receivers, right? So Pickens to me is like clearly a better player than Mike Williams, like not even close. And so I would not be worried at all if I was a Pickens owner. I still think that his outlook is roughly, I think, the same. Mike Williams would be like a thin flyer off waivers for me.
Mike Tomlin, by the way, has just got to be feeling himself big time right now. The offense really took off in 2 games with Russell Wilson at quarterback. I mean, they're trading for wide receivers. Like, Mike Tomlin is like on top of the world.
All right, last team to hit here today is indeed the Tennessee Titans. You get Mason Rudolph again here at quarterback. He throws 2 touchdowns. He played reasonably. They win in overtime against the Patriots. The story for me continues to be on this team. Calvin Ridley over the last couple of weeks continues to look better. Maybe it's because DeAndre Hopkins is gone. Maybe it's because Mason Rudolph's been playing. Maybe it's because his route tree has changed a little bit. It's probably a combination of all 3 of those things. But either way, last 2 weeks, 23 targets for Calvin Ridley and a 65% catch rate. Not elite catch rate, but he was down in like the 30s for a while in catch rate was Calvin Ridley. So, Evan, what do you think of Titans overtime win over the Patriots?
One takeaway is that the Titans lost their center, Lloyd Cushenberry, to a torn Achilles. This is a guy that they gave a bunch of money to. Their right guard and their right tackle positions have been big problems so far. So now that extends into the center position. So, this will continue to be an offense that we can pretty comfortably use defenses against. Brian Callahan, after the game, was talking about Tony Pollard.
Yeah.
And how they have got to get back Tajay Spears or figure something else out, because Tony Pollard had 28 carries in this game. He was still balling into overtime. He had 31 touches. They don't want that for Tony Pollard. He played great. He also had a touchdown taken off the board due to a holding call. He's been playing great, but they do not want him in that 30-touch range.
Not only did he get 30 touches, he didn't practice at all last week. He went DNP due to a foot injury, and they still gave him 30 touches. Says to me that they don't trust this guy, Julius Chestnut, that people kept tweeting me about. They're like, Adam, can I play Julius Chestnut? I was like, that's really thin, bro. And the Titans don't even, and the Titans, even with Tony Pollard hurt, didn't trust it. So yeah. But Tony Pollard's been really impressive all year, man. Like really, really impressive all year has been Tony Pollard. All right. That's going to do it for this edition of the Team by Team show. Appreciate you all being here. If you're watching on YouTube, do us a favor, hit the subscribe button. You'll know when we go live for shows. We are adding a show this week about awards, the awards markets, and betting them. Be sure to tune in for that on Thursday night. For Evan, producer Luke, producer Ryan, for Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.